Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Katherine Kelly, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about trauma and the soul. So, I'm doing this series, The Soul of Psychology, to help people understand how mental health concerns are directly related to the state of our soul, and basically how it is that we need to heal from the body, mind, and soul in order for us to really get that complete resolution. And it feels really appropriate right now and very timely for us to talk about trauma because it feels like the world is in this very tumultuous state. It's going to probably get worse in the next several months. And the reason I say that is astrologically speaking, for those of you who know the work that I do follow some of the astrology. And, this is something I follow because I want to know what's going on in the world because it usually helps people understand how to cope. And so, right now, from some of my colleagues who are astrologers, the world is going through a lot. We've, the election, a lot of the violence that's going on around the world, the shootings that are happening. We had a shooting here in my city just yesterday at a high school. A student was shot. So there's all of this tumultuous energy. And, the reason why I feel like it's really important for us to talk about trauma is that we are in this era from a soul evolution perspective that I'm convinced that we are here to heal trauma. We are here to heal what has been happening in our lives in this lifetime, as well as the collective trauma, whether it's cultural trauma, whether it's family trauma, whatever has been passed down through the ages. If it is your own trauma from past lives, also, it feels like this is really an important time for us to start to address this word. Now, when I first started the process of writing, this is going to be the third book in my Soul of Psychology series. But when I first started writing it, I was thinking I was going to write mostly about PTSD. But the truth is, PTSD doesn't affect everybody, whereas trauma does. And so we can have experiences in our life that, we may not think that they're trauma based, but anything that sticks with us, anything that we have a reaction to, anything that we have an emotional reaction or an emotional kind of trigger to is a form of trauma. And so the definition of trauma, depending on which dictionary you look at, is basically it's an emotional reaction to anything that was a sudden or severe or disturbing event. Now, I want to go back and help you understand it doesn't have to be some huge event to help you or to a point that creates trauma for you. It can be something that happened way, way, way back that to other people may not have been a big thing, but it did attach to you, or you had an energetic, I'm going to explain this in a little bit, but you had an energetic imprint left on you because of that traumatic experience. I was just talking to a client this morning about a shameful event that happened when he was 6 or 7 years old. His father became irate in a situation he had done, actually hadn't done anything intentionally. He just made a mistake, said something wrong, and the father just lost it, went off on him in front of he said there were 200 or 300 people there, and it was just very embarrassing. And so not only was there an energetic imprint left, and again, I'm going to explain that in a second, there's an energetic imprint left about that memory of, oh my gosh, my father becomes irate. This was one of those times where, he became irate. And so he blamed himself for the fact that he did not hold he made some mistake and basically he held himself responsible for it, whereas as a 6 or 7 year old kid you're going to say things that are inappropriate or going to say things that are out of line. You just do that. But he knew that that would cause a traumatic experience. Now, the other part of the trauma that was there was basically that this father shamed him. He shamed him in front of all of these people. And so it was the shame that was part of the trauma. It was the event that was part of the trauma. It was the physical spanking that was happening as part of the trauma. There were all of these different levels of this experience. And yet later on, his mom told him, oh, you just need to be strong. You need to get through this. You need to kind of forget this. Another form of trauma. So when we are shut down, when our emotions are shut down or dismissed, it is another form of trauma. So the reason I'm kind of just talking about this in general terms right now is for you to start thinking about what are the wounds that are held within you? What are the kinds of things that have happened to you? And where are they stored? Well, they are stored in the soul. Yes, we can have memories about them. Yes, we can have physical reactions when we are triggered. But here's where I'm going to explain how this affects the soul. Now, the soul is the essence of who we are. It is the absolute identity of who we are. That identity morphs and changes as we evolve, it changes as we go through life. But when we collect those energetic imprints, and I'm going to kind of, again, I keep saying I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But when we collect those energetic imprints, they pile up on us in a way that basically creates more and more layers of the trauma, but it gives us that more reactivity. It puts us into a situation where we are going to react in bigger and bigger ways as we stack up those kinds of trauma if we don't know how to heal them. So people who are teased at a very young age, they're going to become more and more sensitive to teasing older. They're going to take things more offensively. They're going to take things personally. People who are emotionally dismissed at a young age. So they're just, oh, you're supposed to be seen and not heard. Well, then that's shutting down their voice. Well, every time their voice is shut down, later in life, they're going to have that experience of wanting to be heard. They're going to yell, they're going to scream, they're going to, or shut down so much that it hurts them as well. What if you've been sexually abused at a young age? Sexual abuse at a young age, which, and I talk about this with trauma, that I personally believe that sexual trauma hits us at the core much deeper than any other kind of trauma. And it hits us at that soul level because sexuality is not just a physical situation. Sexuality really is a part of the essence of who we are. And so if you've been sexually abused or traumatized at a very young age, that's going to stick with you. But then if you have other forms of trauma, sexual trauma along the way, it's going to stack up in a way that if you don't know how to heal it, your sexuality is going to be compromised in bigger and bigger ways over time. If you've had racial trauma at a very young age, that's going to stack up as well. If you've had, I'm just trying to think, poverty at a young age, well, then that kind of energetic imprint is going to be left with you. And so you're going to be sensitive about money along the way. When I talk about energetic imprints, if you think about a bruise, so if your soul can become bruised, it is this energetic imprint, this layer that for a lot of people, they don't even realize are there until later, and which is what happened with this gentleman that I was talking to today. But it's that idea of when we have those wounds, we're stamped with it. We are stamped with that energetic imprint on our soul in the deepest part of who we are. And the more that we get stacked up with those energetic imprints, the more and more healing that needs to take place later in life. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be that you were physically attacked or abused. You didn't have to be held at gunpoint. You don't have to be experience a hurricane, which we have had lots of trauma in our area because of the hurricane Helene that came through about 2 hours away from here. You don't have to have been through a huge traumatic event in order to feel trauma. A simple word, is, or teasing, like I said, when you were young. My father used to tease me incessantly because my feet were bigger than he thought they should be. They're not overly, when I look at size now, but I became so sensitive to having big feet. He would tease us, my family members would tease me. And it's one of those things where now now I'm fine with it because I've gone through that. But any kind of teasing, any kind of situation that hurts us at the core of who we are, takes away from our wholeness or our identity, is a form of trauma. So, with this book, I'm going to be talking a lot about these different forms of trauma. I'm going to be talking about vicarious trauma. When we watch someone else go through a traumatic experience, we can feel traumatized. When we have um, kinds of trauma like ancestral trauma, when we know that our ancestors have gone through a lot, it gets infused in us. Those energetic imprints get passed along throughout the generations. So we basically experience what our past generations experience. I also want to talk to you today a little bit about what's happened with the election. Now, this election was traumatic for a lot of people. It was traumatic the whole campaigning period. Everybody was fearful and worried about what was going to happen, regardless of who you were supporting or weren't supporting. There was fear there. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of discomfort. And there have been a lot of fear reactions, a lot of traumatic reactions with the outcome of this election. Now, I tend to be an optimist. I tend to be someone who looks at things and flips it in a way that is going to be beneficial for us in the future because difficulty is a form of growth. It is a form of what helps us evolve. In the case of this election, what with the results of basically the election, there's so much fear about what's going to happen financially, what's going to happen with violence, what's going to happen with guns, what's going to happen with deportation, what's going to happen with Medicare and Social Security and all these things. All of these things have come up. What's going to happen as far as, is sexual assault going to become a thing that is dismissed, and women are going to be victimized. And I'm not only saying women for the sake of dismissing males who have been sexually assaulted, but given our current administration, there are lots of people that are being appointed that have been proven basically to be sexual assault. To assault other people sexually. So there are a lot of wounds and a lot of triggers that are coming up for people that are fearful, that are basically triggering people from a very traumatic level. And these traumas have happened to them ages ago, if not in past lives. And it's coming up now. And so the reason I'm bringing this up right now is this is part of what I think is happening with this election, is that we are supposed to be even more aware of where our wounds are. We're supposed to become even more aware of what we are being triggered by in order to heal it now. And I said to this gentleman this morning that I really believe that this generation that we are in right now, this era, that the humans that are here on this planet that are working through their stuff and being triggered, they are basically here to heal trauma. They are here to basically move through and heal the stuff, because if you don't heal it, it will find you. It will come up later. It will pop up in ways that you're not expecting. And it will flood you. And so it's just super important to look at, wow, what kind of traumas have I had? What layers can I heal and peel off so that those stacks aren't so thick that you have a difficult time later healing them. Um, this book is going to be talking about past life trauma. It's going to be talking about soul trauma. It's going to be talking about astrological personality and how that triggering that sometimes we have just from our astrological personality, what ends up happening when we have a trauma, because some people are more susceptible to certain kinds of reactions. I'm going to be talking about soul composition. I'm going to be talking about all kinds of things that basically typical practitioners aren't aware of, and they need to become aware of, because this is a lot of what the trauma is that's coming forth right now. This is what is coming to the surface. And although I absolutely believe that current and modern treatment from the body and the mind perspective are necessary, oftentimes it's insufficient in actually helping a person get through many mental health concerns, but particularly trauma. So this book, again, is really going to be talking a lot more about that. But I want to put this video out there for food for thought, for you to start thinking about, wow, okay, why is it that something still gets triggered within me? What is it that's coming up within me that I haven't thought about for years, maybe decades? And it is not unusual at all for someone in their 50s, 60s, 70s, sometimes even 80s, to finally be ready to deal with their trauma. And they may not think they're ready, but their soul thinks they're ready, because this stuff can flood forth, having all kinds of memories, having all kinds of awarenesses, and then it can flood a person to the point where they have no choice but to take care of that trauma, to go for treatment, to go for help. And so this, I think, again, I know I tend to be an optimist. I tend to be a Pollyanna when it comes to discomfort, that there's always something positive. There's always something that is based in evolution or based in our healing that comes up when we have discomfort or emotional turmoil. And this is a time where many, many people have a lot of emotional turmoil, but I would really invite you to look at what's getting triggered within you and use it to the advantage of healing, because whatever is triggered for you with this election and what's going to happen in the next several years as far as the results of this election, we have to, yes, weather the human condition, but we also have to look at, wow, this is such an opportunity. This is such a prime opportunity to heal from a soul level, not just the body and mind level, but to start understanding that the soul has the answers. The the essence of who you are is just trying to speak when it brings up this discomfort. And until you release those visceral emotions, until you have a way and I'm going to say productive way to work through these kinds of things, you're not going to heal. You can take it out on someone. That's not going to help you heal. And I will say this, I'm going to add this, that I've said this for years. There's a book that was out years ago, and it's called Hurt People, Hurt People. And it really got to this idea of, wow, people who are wounded, people who are hurt, don't even realize they're hurting others, either through their words, their communication, their physical abuse, their dismissal, whatever it might be. But those wounded, and these are my words, those wounded souls are likely to be the ones that wound you if you let them. But that's where we have the opportunity right now to really look at this from a trauma perspective and heal those different layers that have been kind of imprinted on us and kind of energetically programmed into us. So this whole idea of trauma, everybody on this planet has some form of trauma. So if you think you don't, then you must not be human. But just keep in mind that whatever is coming up for you as a result of this election or the times we're in or whatever else is like coming up right now, that it is actually your invitation to heal. It is such an important time for us to take it as an invitation and not shove it back down. Now, this gentleman this morning said, gosh, I just want to go on with my life. I don't want to deal with this. He's been doing a ton of work in the last 8 years. A lot of his own trauma, childhood trauma, a lot of work that he's doing as far as alcohol and drugs and relationship stuff and all these different things. And he said, man, there's just times when I just want to go on with my life and forget about all this. And I pretty much said to him that the second you become conscious is the second you can no longer shove it back in a box. And so from a soul evolution perspective, from a healing perspective, it's an invitation from our soul and an invitation from the universe or the powers that be, the higher spirits, whatever words you want to use. Whenever that discomfort comes up, it is an invitation to evolve beyond it. And that's exactly what this is about. And the reason that I talk about the soul so much is that it is the essence of who we are. And if we don't heal down to that level, we're still going to stumble over ourselves for the rest of our lives. So stay tuned. More to come with this Soul of Psychology series. I'm going to be talking more about the anxiety book, the depression book, the trauma book. The next one after the trauma book is grief. I've got all of these different levels of things that I'm going to be talking about from a soul level and help you understand how to heal some of this yourself, as well as if you're a practitioner or a coach or an educator or an administrator, you're going to understand that there's more to this than the body and the mind. We have to go to that depth. So I hope this was helpful for you. More to come. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.